Top of the morning folks, today from the Reddit Rainforest. Teachers of Reddit, what's the most embarrassing thing you have accidentally said/done in class? I was explaining to my class that I was open to do whatever they wanted for a final project. I wanted to tell them I was down for whatever. DFW. What did I actually tell them? I was DTF. About half the class got it and started laughing or turning red. The other half of the class was just confused. I stammered out something about DFW, being down for whatever, but I think the damage was done. My ex-GF was a linguistics professor in a UK university, but she is American and not that familiar with UK culture. In one class I think she was talking about verbing nouns and used the example of dog and dogging. The whole class started giggling and she did not understand why. She had to get the students to explain to her that in the UK dogging is a kind of public sex for exhibitionists where couples will duck in their cars while people stand around watching and masturbating. I told her class that if they did not do a certain assignment, that I would take them to Pound Town, not realizing the connotations that it had. They all laughed. I always said stupid stuff when I taught college. Herp is instead of herms. This was also my first inspected lesson I had my first year. Bless the 13-year-olds who kept it together to help me pass the inspection. I also drew a tsunami wave on the whiteboard that looked like a huge penis. I'm a swimming teacher. We work in the pool and are pretty hands-on, and once a little boy of around 5 grabbed my tit, honked it and said, "Why, have you got squishy bits there?" And I said, "Oh, well, it's a big girl thing," whilst distancing myself massively from this child. I don't need nonce allegations, thank you. I was absolutely mortified. Not a teacher, but senior year of HS. We had a native Russian speaker trying to get our class clowns to calm down. Got a bit flustered and said, "Why you always make me so hard?" He meant strict, but we all kind of giggled. He paused for a second then said we were dirty lol. One of my fave teachers. He had nearly perfect English too, except when things got a bit rowdy. Not a teacher, but just a few months ago a student in my class raised his hand and corrected the professor. He finished his comment with, "Sorry, do not want to be too anal," to which the professor replied, "Anal is good. I love anal." The class had a good chuckle and she was clearly embarrassed, then we moved on like it never happened. In cookery in Scotland, teachers have to avoid telling pupils to use a knob of butter or prick the pastry. Childish but always causes laughter. Had a professor who was using a new web browser than usual to show us something. One of his tabs was labeled "Suck My Balls." We called him out on it, and he showed us it was just a clip from John Oliver, but we still gave him a hard time for a couple of weeks. Not a teacher, but I witnessed a true gem. In my high school, there was a teacher who had been there forever and could pretty much do whatever he wanted. He was morbidly obese and would scoot around in his desk chair. His way of teaching was to put on movies that were a little relevant to the subject. At best, I was lucky enough to have him for a few classes. One day he decided to have us watch Dances with Wolves. Some smartass decided to make a comment on the main woman being ugly. The teacher slowly scooted over to the TV and sat there for a moment, turning it off. You could practically see steam coming out of this man's ears. He then quickly scooted over to the kid's desk, moving at a speed I did not think was possible, and yelled, "You old know a pretty woman if she sat on your face." I miss that dude. Not a teacher, but I have a story. In high school I had an English teacher that was the kindest, sweetest, most loving teacher I ever had. You could really see that she cared about her students. She was kind of old school. She wore dresses every day. She wore her hair up in a bun. She asked about her students every day, and she would cry if a student had a hardship or big problem. She was prim and proper and always looked well put together. So she was teaching an advanced placement English. Only 8 students in the class, 6 girls and 2 guys. One day she had given us an assignment and we were all busy working on it when she stepped out of the room. She had gone to the restroom. When she returned and she turned around to write on the board, she had inadvertently tucked or caught the skirt of her dress in her pantyhose and her entire butt, panties and legs were exposed to us. Several girls gasped. Everyone was quiet. I mouthed to the girl next to me to go tell her. She refused. I got up and called her name. I told her I needed to speak with her urgently in the hallway. She quickly met me at the door and stepped outside of the classroom. I explained that she needed to adjust her dress in the back. She was mortified. I went back into the class and sat down. A few minutes later she came back into the class and it appeared like she may have cried. We never spoke a word about it. All she said was "thank you to me for saving her from that situation. I'm sure that was the most embarrassing thing she had ever done. My English teacher was once talking about Tupac because we were going over poetry. She accidentally called him a rapist. Double P is intentional instead of a rapper. My wife, kindergarten teacher, once told a kid that he pissed her off, which, in case I need to elaborate, is not the typical way to talk to kindergarteners. Not a teacher, but I remember back in grade school, my teacher was writing a sentence on the board, and instead of writing he hit her across the face. She wrote he dicked her across the face. I do not remember exactly why she was writing that sentence on the board, but I always get a chuckle when I think about what she must have been thinking about at that time. Not a teacher as such, but training to be one. I was walking around a classroom as the kids practiced their handwriting and walked behind a kid who chose that exact moment to step backwards, causing our legs to get caught in one another, which then caused both of us to fall over one another and end up on the floor, which was both embarrassing as the actual class teacher laughed at me and a bit painful. Things they do not teach you in college. Do not pronounce the word penalize like penalize in front of a group of 6th graders. When I was a substitute teacher, I was in charge of middle school social studies class for a week. During one of the lessons, I used the phrase penal system. The giggles and jokes basically derailed the class for the rest of the period. I could not stop giggling when we had a sub teaching us about the Australian penal colony. He took me outside and asked what was so funny. This man was my future boyfriend's dad. So I'm a maths teacher, and as part of an end of term Christmas activity we were doing a functional task design near own Christmas dinner. Pupils had to design a poster with timings and costs etc. of their Christmas dinner. One of the pupils asked me what pork looked like, and I told them to draw it as a cartoon. So I went to type in cartoon pork into Google with the projector on. However, I accidentally typed naked people instead of pork. Thank Duck for search filters. Muscle memory? Oh absolutely. When the kids say "oh come on" to an assignment and you fire back "do not you or come on me ... Here's my story about being a preteen and listening to my teacher during a sex ed class. We were in grade 6 and had mandatory sex ed classes. It was mostly how reproduction works and how to avoid unwanted pregnancies. We were in a rougher part of town where there was a lot of pregnant teenagers. One day during these lessons, Mrs. F asked us if we knew what oral sex was. No one seemed to know or fessed up to knowing. This was pre-internet. She kept saying oral sex and mouthing the O with her lips. No one said anything. She even drew an O on the board trying to get us to guess the answer. Again, no one knew or said anything. She finally made the O with her mouth and pretended to suck a penis with bob her head while stroking and cupping balls with her hands. No one said malarkey. Finally, she said it's when a woman sucks a man's penis for fun. The whole class collectively went "you . She went on to say ... it did not taste half bad. I'll never forget her saying that or that entire lesson. In my first year of teaching, I worked for a charter school whose physical plant happened to be in a former bank. My classroom was, literally, what used to be the vault. All that's to say that it was way too small to be a classroom. Students were so packed in that desks were pressed almost all the way up to the whiteboard. One day, I was up in front of the kids, and I stretched to the right to make a correction on the board. Must have jarred something, because I let loose the loudest, most fluttery, noxious smelling fart ever directly into the face of a student in the front row. I have never seen a child look more horrified, and these were 8th graders. So you could imagine how the rest of that class period went. I was in my research methods class taking notes from the board while the teacher spoke and not really paying attention to him when I hear the word testicles, which caught my attention, and I thought maybe I had misheard. Looking around, I noticed other students confused about what they just hear. Based on what was on the slide at the time, the word he was going for was testable. I was a prof at uni, grad student, playing the part of cheap teaching labor. Ed just got a new Mac, and I did not realize that QuickTime kept all your last videos open when you reopened the application. Now it's wonderful. I'm pretty sure it's just one window with what you're watching, but back then it was some stupid ass design ... Anyways, I double clicked some video I meant to show the class, and it opened up alright, but so did another window in the background with some nasty naked people in it. I maximized that ducking thing as fast as I could, let the video play, and scanned the class for giggles or looks of horror but saw nothing. As soon as the video was done I did not take any chances and pulled the damn VGA cable right out of the laptop and closed it and switched to a lesson on the whiteboard. Could have been terrible. I instruct a hands-on course for wearing full-bodied personal protective equipment. I sometimes forget people, especially females, have personal bubbles and do not like males touching them. I feel really bad when they give me that no way look when I reach in to adjust their suits. In my second to last year of secondary school we had an Indian maths teacher whose English was really good, but sometimes she'd phrase stuff really weirdly. We were going through some homework and the questions were listed as A, B, C, and when she got to D she said out loud to the entire class, "Somebody give me the D." She could not understand why everyone was laughing. There was also a kid in my class called Anus, but she pronounced his name as Anus. A history teacher at my school was talking about some election or something, accidentally said erection instead. He just stood there in silence for a while and then carried on with the lesson while everyone else was struggling not to laugh. It's not exactly the same, but I went to an all-boys Catholic high school. This kid Billy fell asleep in class. He all knew he dated the head cheerleader Susie from another school. Susie had a very bad reputation and was known for servicing lots of guys. So the teacher, male, goes up to Billy and whispers time to get up Billy in a female sounding voice. I think his intention was to sound like Billy's mother in his sleep. Billy says, "I cannot get it up again. I'm exhausted." Unfortunately that is all there is for this video, but do not worry, there are many more coming. Like and subscribe for more videos from the Reddit Rainforest. Thanks for watching.